Tonight on CFTK-TV, an agreement has been made for the Air Canada strike. Insurance claim reports are higher than ever after an intense summer for Canadian weather, and the Conservative Party is once again calling for a fall election.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damian Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. A couple of earthquakes rattled off the BC coast yesterday afternoon, with the first being larger than the second. The U.S. Geological Survey measured the first quake at 6.5 on the Richter scale, while Natural Resources Canada set the magnitude at 6, and the second shakeup was a bit smaller at 4.5. The Canadian agency set the depth of the quake at about 10 kilometers and said it was centered between Haida Gwaii and Port McNeill on northern Vancouver Island. And a BC resident was at his home in Sandspit when he felt the ground shake and says it was long enough to know it was a quake, but not long enough to worry over. There was also a notification saying that at least the first quake was only located about 270 kilometers away from Kitimat here in northern BC. Well, it took a little while, perhaps even past the last minute of the deadline, but the looming Air Canada strike is now averted, with both sides coming to an agreement. Here's Camille Karamali with an update.
It was a turbulent week with Air Canada and its pilots union trying to hammer out a new labor agreement before a midnight deadline Saturday. If both sides couldn't agree on a deal, flight cancellations would have begun with the pilots' work stoppage as early as Wednesday. But just minutes after midnight, both sides were able to agree on a tentative new agreement, which still needs to be ratified by union members and approved by the airline's board of directors. The airline says the new contract will provide a framework for the future growth of the airline. The pilots union says the deal addresses key issues like compensation, retirement, and work rules without getting into specifics, and will generate an approximate additional $1.9 billion of value for the pilots over the span of the contract. The tentative agreement, not shared publicly but seen by CTV, includes a nearly 42% wage increase over 4 years, with 26% backdated to 2023 and a 4% increase each year until 2026.
And everybody's going to be looking to this contract as the new standard for which, the negotiation will be going forward. So labor costs will be going up. Hopefully the airlines understand that.
Air Canada says customers who changed their flights this week in anticipation of a potential work stoppage can now change their booking back to the original flight at no cost. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
Now, in a recent news release, the Prince Rupert Port Authority made it official that they have appointed a new chair for their 7-person board of directors in Peter Lanton for a minimum of a two-year span. And Lanton has been a part of the PRPA's board since 2019, when he was initially placed by the BC provincial government. He's also held various roles on it ever since being the chair of the Sustainability and Audit Committees, as well as serving as a member of the Human Resources and Compensation Committee. Lanton also has about 2 decades worth of experience in both financial administration and governance, while also previously serving as the elected president of the Haida Nation between 2012 and 2018, as well as the chair for Gwaii Trust. Federally, there has been some changes between parties as we approach an election 1 year from now, or maybe not. Here's Jeremy Charon in Ottawa with an update.
When would you like an election? As soon as possible.
A clear message from Conservative MPs on their way into a one-day caucus meeting in Ottawa.
Justin Trudeau needs to go. Canadians are looking forward to a carbon tax election.
United behind their leader, whose message to his team was a familiar one.
Canadians cannot wait. They need to vote now for common sense Conservatives, and Jagmeet Singh needs to vote with us to trigger a carbon tax election now.
The Conservatives have vowed that a non-confidence motion is coming this fall in an effort to topple the minority Trudeau government after the NDP ended its supply and confidence deal with the Liberals this summer.
Sellout Jagmeet Singh wants you to believe he's a changed man. He's a totally new person.
The New Democrats have stopped short of committing, though, to send Canadians to the polls right away.
Pierre Poilievre just wants to talk about cuts and cutting all of these programs. And so the NDP will be proceeding vote by vote, like we did during COVID, and looking at the public interest.
And the Liberals maintain they're focused only on pushing forward with policies.
Mr. Poilievre will have to explain himself, but for our part, we're coming into Parliament with solutions for Canadians, with solutions that make their lives more affordable.
All of this ahead of crucial Monday by-elections in Montreal and Winnipeg.
Very high stakes for both Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh.
La Salle-Verdun, a longtime Liberal stronghold, where the party is hoping to avoid the same fate it saw in Toronto's St. Paul's earlier this summer. While in Elmwood-Transcona, the NDP is trying to hold on to a strong orange seat, but facing a push from the Conservatives.
Now, facing a continued lag in the polls, the outcome of those by-elections could be a referendum on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But so far, he's reiterated he's not going anywhere.
Coming up next, more Canadians than ever have had to use insurance for weather purposes. Welcome back. Well, 1 dead and 2 are injured after a head-on collision that happened yesterday in Smithers. The BC Highway Patrol were called to Highway 16 west of Raymond Road, where a pickup heading east struck an SUV heading west. The pickup had one occupant who was taken to the hospital with life-serious injuries, and the SUV's driver was pronounced deceased on the scene despite life-saving efforts by the first responders. The SUV's passenger was also transported to the hospital with serious injuries, and officers continue to investigate what happened but suspect impairment to be a factor from the collision. The BCHP are asking anyone with dashcam footage or who witnessed the crash to contact the Smithers RCMP detachment at 250-847-3233. Well, it was a very intense summer for Canadians, especially from the weather forecast, which has created more property damage than ever before. And with that, insurance rates are at an all-time high. Here's Kathy Lee from CTV.
Wildfires in the west, flooding in the east, and severe thunderstorms in between. It's been a devastating year for the country.
It will almost certainly be the worst year in Canadian history.
The Insurance Bureau of Canada says claims this year for the Toronto floods, $938 million. Jasper wildfire, more than $800 million. Calgary hailstorm, $2.8 billion. And the storms in Quebec expected to be in the billions.
We're probably on the year looking at over $5 billion in losses. It's partly because things cost a little bit more to replace or to restore, but mainly it's because these events are more frequent and more intense than what we witnessed before.
We are still actually emitting just globally as many greenhouse gas emissions as we have in the past. So that means that for the next 50 to 80 years, we're looking at more extreme events.
These extreme events putting more pressure on home insurance premiums, unattainable for homeowners and unsustainable for insurers. Some companies in Alberta have left the province. Others, like Intact, have partnered up with Montana-based wildfire defense systems to provide loss intervention services and attempt to mitigate the cost of extreme weather.
That if we want insurance to be available and affordable into the future in this country, there needs to be some sort of partnership between the governments and between the insurance industry on sharing the cost.
Experts say the focus should also be on reducing the risk on buildings and properties and making it a common practice.
In the future, we could see scenarios where governments are requiring more resilient building material through things like construction codes, building codes.
The Insurance Bureau of Canada says the federal government has announced it's setting up the foundations to partner up with insurance companies to provide high-risk flood insurance. However, it says progress has been slow, and given the current political instability in Ottawa, the concern is the plan won't get off the ground. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
Well, turning to tonight's forecast, the Prince Rupert area should have heavy rain at times with an expected 20 to 30 millimeters. There should be winds coming from the southeast at 30 kilometers per hour, increasing to potentially 50. There will be a low of 11 degrees as well. The Terrace and Kitimat area will also have rain, just not a very heavy amount tonight, with winds coming from the south at 30 kilometers per hour, increasing to 50 as well. There will also be a low of 11 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should be mainly cloudy tonight with a 70% chance of showers with a low of 8 degrees. And now onto your weekly weather forecast. The coast should have mainly rain once again as we approach the end of the summer season. However, there will be some sun tomorrow and Wednesday. The rain will then come back on Thursday, and the low will be Saturday night at 6 degrees, and the high will be 15 degrees on the sunny days this week. The Terrace and Kitimat area will have some rain tonight and tomorrow, followed by a high of 18 degrees and sunny on Wednesday, then back to rain on Thursday and back to sun but cooler temperatures as the weekend starts. The low will be 6 degrees at night from Thursday to Saturday. And finally, the Bulkley Valley will see pretty much everything this week with sun on Wednesday and Friday, rain Tuesday and Saturday, along with clouds on Thursday. The high will be 17 on Wednesday and the low will be 3 from Thursday to Saturday as well. And now on to your Northwest Roadside Report. There is utility work in Burns Lake, Fort Fraser, and Vanderhoof. There is construction in Burns Lake and paving operations near McBride. Highway 37 has roadside brushing near Misiaden Junction and maintenance south of Jade City. Highway 37A has road maintenance near Stewart, and the Nishka Highway has construction near New Ayanch. And now let's take a look at the roads around the Northwest. Still to come, cruises are expanding their destinations along with length for their customers. Welcome back. Well, the cruise business is getting bigger and bigger, and companies are finding ways to get more creative with their stops and their length of stay for passengers. Here's Gio Benitez of ABC News.
Ending where it started at the Port of Miami, this ultimate world cruise homecoming is a bittersweet goodbye for passengers on Royal Caribbean's Serenade of the Seas.
We became like one big happy family.
Over 9 months at sea, these passengers explored 65 countries across ports in all 7 continents.
My favorite port was Moorea,
Sydney, Australia,
Taj Mahal in India,
Bali.
We made it around the world.
The epic adventure won viral postmark through the hashtag Ultimate World Cruise, where passengers brought landlubbers along for the journey.
Good morning, happy day 4. We are in Cozumel, Mexico.
There's a light show.
We've been keeping up with Angie Linderman, who treated her trip as a working vacation since the start of the cruise in December. She didn't bring back many souvenirs, just incredible memories.
There's definitely a few of them. I would say the Great Wall of China at night. That's not something that happens very often. I loved Portofino. We spent the day at a beach. We just sat there all day, and then friends just kept coming.
This as the cruise industry expects major growth, forecasting a nearly 25% increase in passengers by 2027. Experts say millennials are the driving force with high-speed internet on board.
You can go to the ends of the earth and you are still connected. You can still be in touch, which I think for many people is a real fear when they're traveling that far.
Other cruise lines now offering extended world voyages. Holland America offering a 28-day sailing starting around $5,500. That will take passengers under the 2026 solar eclipse path of totality in Iceland. Regent with a trip for 168 days, averaging as much as $111,000 with stops in Australia, Indonesia, Thailand, Colombia, and more.
Well, the Terrace RCMP released an online report on Friday that spoke of what incidents had been occurring for them as September got closer to its halfway point. One part of the report mentioned how an officer pulled over a pickup truck that was driving erratically for a sobriety test, only to discover several rifles, a shotgun, knives, boxes of ammunition, and drug paraphernalia throughout the vehicle. While the driver was not impaired, he was still detained, and the BC Prosecution Services was sent the evidence for the consideration of charges. Another incident in the report was when a terrorist bylaw officer was attacked by an uncooperative man while the officer was conducting their regular duties. The RCMP later found the attacker and arrested him for the assault before later releasing him with a future court date. Well, retail stores are now going to test out a new type of way to catch shoplifters in the act, but also to protect their own workers. Once again, here's Jeremy Sherrill.
It's scenes like this retailers are increasingly faced with, trying to find ways to stop stealing.
If you look at shoplifting and organized retail crime, it's ballooned over the last, call it 2 to 3 years.
Now, Canadian retail giant Loblaw is trying something new.
We're going to pilot body cams in a store, which is something we haven't done before. In Loblaws, our number one priority is keeping our colleagues and our customers safe.
The pilot project will see workers wear body cameras in 4 stores across 2 markets, Calgary and Saskatoon, which it says have seen the biggest jump in violent incidents.
Violence against our staff members, against our team members, is on an all-time high, and the trend isn't getting better, it's getting worse.
According to recent data from the Retail Council of Canada, retailers have reported a 300% increase in thefts that involve violence over the last 4 years. This security expert and former OPP commissioner says body cameras could have the same impact in retail as they do in law enforcement.
This is a deterrence factor, number one. When people see that camera hanging in front of the chest of the employee, they may be less likely to be verbally abusive or violent in any way. And if they do become violent, then there's a recording of it.
Retailers across the board have increased measures to deter thieves. More stores are scanning receipts, using security gates at self-checkouts, and even requiring scanning membership cards on the way in.
And more security cameras and more checks and balances. I mean, that's the sad reality of the situation that we are in. Theft is on the increase.
And it comes at a cost. Canadian retailers alone lose billions a year from theft. Loblaw says the body cam pilot project will last 3 months in hopes it will decrease violent encounters. But the company says it has no plans beyond the trial run. Jeremy Sherrill, CTV News, Ottawa.
And now we turn our attention to the stock market. The Canadian dollar is down 0.8 cents. The price of gold is down 3.10. Oil is up 1.30. Natural gas is up 3 cents. Aluminum is up 55.50. In Toronto, the TSX is up 133. The Venture Index is up 162. In New York, the Dow Jones is up 228, and NASDAQ is down about 92. Still ahead, the Emmys made its return for the 76th time in industry history. Welcome back. Well, out east, the whooping cough is making its impact around schools, especially in the Maritimes. Here's Garrett Berry with CTV in Newfoundland.
Back to school and back to a fertile breeding ground for coughs, colds, sneezes, and sniffles.
Anytime that people are together in an enclosed space, close together, certainly we can see an increase in the spread of respiratory viruses.
And in Newfoundland and Labrador, an unwelcome guest in classrooms, whooping cough, the bacteria now spreading outside of St. John's and into smaller communities.
We now really have to say that this is a province-wide outbreak.
And outbreaks now across the country, cases surging in Quebec, with more than 13,000 discovered just this year. Increased illness in PEI and New Brunswick, too.
It's not even unique to Canada. There's a resurgence of pertussis in several other parts of the world. And even taking a step back, there's a resurgence in other vaccine-preventable illnesses.
But here in Newfoundland and Labrador, health officials say there's no sign vaccine uptake is slipping. Instead, they call it waning immunity, vaccines that become a little less effective as time goes on and need to be supplemented with booster shots.
Not all vaccines are created equally, and this one is not as what we would say immunogenic as others, and we do see waning immunity for this infection.
So part of this province's plan is to move whooping cough vaccines forward, offering shots to kids in grade 8 now, instead of making them wait until grade 9. Officials hope that might help with a cluster of cases in the junior high school levels.
Over 60% of the cases that we have are actually in school-age children, and especially we're seeing it in that junior high group.
In the meantime, it's some familiar sounding advice. Stay home if you're sick, cover your cough, and consider wearing a mask. Gary Perry, CTV News, St. John's.
And the 76th edition of the Emmys were hosted last night with some old and new faces winning awards. Here's Lara Spencer of ABC.
Shogun. Shogun! Shogun!
It was an historic night for FX's Shogun, breaking the record for most wins in an Emmy night with 18.
It was an East meets West dream project with respect.
It stars Anna Sawai and Hiroyuki Sanada taking home the top dramatic acting prizes.
It was my first leading role in Hollywood. It's like a dream of a dream.
A dream of a dream.
This only happened because of everyone who was working behind the camera.
And Emmy hosts Dan Levy and Dad Eugene Levy bringing their father-son banter to stage.
And I know some of you might be expecting us to make a joke about whether The Bear is really a comedy. But in the true spirit of The Bear, we will not be making any jokes.
The Bear.
And The Bear having the last laugh, winning 3 of the top acting prizes for comedy series.
The Bear.
The Bear. The Bear.
My heart is just beating right out of its chest. Thank you for choosing me.
Do you even dare to dream?
You know, we made this show with no expectations, you know.
But The Bear was beaten for Best Comedy Series by Hacks.
Hacks.
And Jean Smart taking home her 3rd Emmy for Best Actress in a Comedy for playing comedian Deborah Vance.
It's very humbling, it really is, and I appreciate this because I just don't get enough attention. I'm serious. The gift that keeps on giving.
Right? In the limited or anthology series, Jodie Foster winning her very first Emmy for True Detective Night Country.
It was love, 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 and when you feel that, something amazing happens. It's deep and wonderful, and it's older than this place and this time.
And Baby Reindeer winning big with 4 Emmys.
Take risks, push boundaries, explore the uncomfortable, dare to fail in order to achieve. Thank you so much for this award.
It was also a night of reunions, from The West Wing to Happy Days.
Hey, Laura. Nice to see you.
That will be all for tonight's cast. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good night.